drawing the attention of Lin's skeletal warriors towards himself. He charged forward with a large shield in hand and clashed with the skeletal warriors, but clearly, the knight underestimated the power of the skeletal warriors, finding himself forcefully repelled several meters by a single strike. Nanako looked shocked, thinking to herself that even a knight imbued with the strength of a titan was sent staggering backward. How powerful are these skeletons really? Either way, without missing a beat, she cast another spell to further enhance the knight's prowess. His aura surged anew, clearly applying even more buffs, his muscles swelling and veins bulging as he roared and launched into a fierce counterattack against the skeletal warriors. This time, the knight stood as a bulwark against 5 skeletal warriors, shield raised in defense while his other hand brandished a longsword, striking back with relentless ferocity. The spectators watched in disbelief. The strength of these powerful skeletons was well known to them, yet here stood a single man, holding his ground against 5. They all began to wonder, what can Lin do now? Can he still win, even after having all of his skeleton army countered? Nanako's smile widened. She taunted Lin that Lin's little skelly didn't seem to be listening to him now, insinuating that even they refused to heed his commands, since they were all taunted by the knight's taunting skill. Lin, for his part, felt somewhat amused. To be fair, he hadn't issued any explicit orders to his skeletal warriors. He simply summoned them, and they were acting on their own. Yet this seemed to bolster his opponent's confidence in a rather unexpected way. Unruffled by Lin's composed demeanor, Nanako was driven to deploy her ultimate skill, summoning yet another monstrous creature. This creature, covered in barbs and sporting limbs as sharp as scythes, bore an eerie resemblance to a spider. Upon its arrival, it swiftly merged with one of the mages, who then abruptly raised his head, eyes ablaze with a sinister red glow. With a commanding gesture, the mage unleashed a series of breezes that materialized as chains upon the skeletal warriors, effectively immobilizing them and halting their advance. Nanako's laughter echoed across the arena, taunting Lin while saying he was going to lose very soon unless he could conjure up a countermeasure. However, Lin's response was far from defeated. Instead, he simply asked if that's all she got, leaving Nanako momentarily taken aback. Before she could grasp the full implications of his words, the arena was suddenly covered by a red light. Nanako's smile froze as she witnessed hundreds of red shackles emerge, ensnaring her and her teammates in a tight grip. Recognizing the skill as a curse, Nanako found herself and her team immobilized, unable to move as Lin slowly approached. Despite her efforts to retreat, she found herself rooted to the spot, her expression shifting to one of fear as Lin casually bypassed the knight and walked up to her directly. The audience erupted in disbelief, unable to comprehend how Lin had so swiftly turned the tide of battle. The members of Nanako's team stood motionless, their expressions devoid of any look of anxiety or urgency. Lin then posed a question to Nanako, inquiring whether her abilities could only be used on the corpse. Her wide-eyed reaction was to answer enough for him. Lin's gaze conveyed a mix of disdain and mockery. As it turned out, her teammates were not living beings, but rather reanimated corpses or precisely puppets crafted through some ancient skill. As a necromancer, Lin is sensitive to these things. Lin, without wasting more time, summoned a soul flame onto his hand. The sight of the flame sent Nanako into a panic. Though unsure of its nature, she sensed the power behind it. She struggled in vain to escape, her efforts futile against the shackles binding her. It was then the audience realized something unsettling. The stiff demeanor of Nanako's teammates revealed them not actual living beings, but rather puppets, crafted from the corpses of fallen professionals, a revelation that sent shivers down their spines. As the soul flame descended upon Nanako, she experienced a brief, excruciating pain that seemed to scorch her soul itself. But the agony lasted less than a heartbeat. The next moment, she found herself defeated, standing off the arena, with Lin's soul flame vanishing as swiftly as it had appeared. Staring at her hands in disbelief, Nanako could hardly accept her defeat. Looking up at Lin, still standing in the arena, she wondered if the soul-searing pain was another of his skills. With a heavy sigh, she thought, if only she had brought a healer with her, the outcome might have been different. Healers could cleanse curses, after all. But who could have predicted Lin would employ a curse? It seemed there were many secrets about Lin yet to be uncovered. Not long after, the referee soon declared Lin the victor, advancing him to the next round. Lin rejoined his teammates, their battle over for now, but elsewhere the competition raged on, and whoever won will be determining their final adversary. The other match concluded with a team led by Su Sheng from the Xiaojing Academy prevailing effortlessly, mocking their opponents for being weak. As they descended from the arena, Su Sheng inquired about their next opponents. Glancing towards Lin and his team, a teammate predicted their upcoming match against them. Su Sheng seemed surprised, having not expected Lin to reach the final. Moments later, Su Sheng approached Lin and his teammates, telling them that his team needed no rest and inquired if Lin's team did. He didn't want to waste more time and simply wanted to go home with the coveted Brilliant Skill Scroll reward. Su Sheng regarded this tournament as a mere formality, hardly seeing Lin as a worthy opponent. Lin, however, had seen enough spoiled brats in his days and was unfazed, suggesting they were ready any time. As both teams took their positions on the arena, the audience buzzed with excitement, anticipating a showdown between the Su Sheng's team, who had just defeated the Holy Domain faction, and Lin, who had made his way to the finals just by himself. The fact that both hailed from Xiaojing Academy, the Empire's most prestigious institution, only added to the spectacle. Emma cast a worried glance at Tao Tao, questioning if they were truly to stand aside without aiding Lin. Tao Tao sighed, asserting that their involvement would only hinder Lin, and all they could do was trust Lin. Su Sheng, observing Lin taking the stage alone, scoffed, mistaking Lin's confidence for pretense. He turned around and dismissed his own team with a few words. Shortly after, all of his team turned around and jumped off the arena. As it turned out, Su Sheng also prepared to face Lin alone. Su Sheng had heard of Lin before, however. He wasn't very fond of him, and his words were carried with hints of disdain while considering Lin's way of earning points by carrying others in dungeons was unacceptable. Lin's patience wore thin against Su Sheng's arrogance. When Su Sheng lamented the disgrace of sharing an academy with Lin simply shook his head, while telling Su Sheng that if he had some problem with his brain, he then advised him to seek medical attention rather than barking senselessly. Hearing this, Su Sheng's face flushed with anger. It seems that villains are all like this. They can insult you, but you can't insult them back. If you do, they get angry. Look, even the art style changes, and their nostrils become bigger than my big toe. Meanwhile, Tao Tao looked at Yi Yi with a face full of bewilderment, wondering why this insult sounded so familiar. Yi Yi giggled sheepishly, insisting it definitely wasn't something she taught. Su Sheng, a spoiled little brat, naturally had never been spoken to in this manner. He immediately summoned a weapon, a golden staff, revealing his profession as a holy light mage. Lin couldn't care less about him. He had encountered many like Su Sheng before, and the only solution was to pin them down and give them a couple of slaps to snap them out of it. The battle began. Lin also summoned several skeletal warriors. As a holy light mage, Su Sheng had an innate disdain for undead creatures. The shape on his forehead suddenly lit up, and he shouted, "Disgusting undead, receive the punishment of the holy light." The arena lit up again, turning into a bright ball of light, obscuring everything within. Inside the light, Lin's skeleton armor shimmered, clearly under attack. Only when the light touched him did he realize it was a spiritual attack, indicating the enemy planned to affect his spirit from the start. However, it was evident the enemy underestimated Lin's high spirit attribute. Su Sheng, maintaining the light with one hand, raised the other high. Seeing Lin unmoving in the distance, he used his second skill, Blade of Light. A sword made of light flew towards Lin at the speed of light, but it shattered into pieces upon coming in contact with the skeleton armor. Su Sheng frowned. The durability of the skeleton armor exceeded his expectations. In the quiet world of light, the footsteps of skeletons were particularly distinct. By the time Su Sheng reacted, he was surrounded by several skeletal warriors, but he wasn't so weak. A beam of holy light from the sky instantly sent the surrounding skeletal warriors flying several meters away. Lin watched this scene, thinking to himself that the opponent's skills seemed impressive, but they did no damage. Then, he summoned a few skeletal mages. Su Sheng watched in disbelief as the skeletal warriors charged at him for the second time, unable to comprehend why his holy light couldn't purify these undead summons. Sweat appeared on his forehead, and he took a few deep breaths to calm himself. Just as he was about to say something, a loud boom occurred, and 2 bolts of lightning struck down. Su Sheng's body was smoking, and his hair stood on end. He quickly used the holy light shield, and a white magical shield appeared around him. Su Sheng looked disheveled, wanting to continue speaking, but then several more bolts of lightning descended from the sky. Does anyone remember what Su Sheng was about to say? Probably not. It didn't really matter anyway, since he was probably just ranting some nonsense. But when the second lightning bolt struck from the sky, he finally grasped the vast power gap between him and Lin. His heart roared in fury. He had already been accepted into the Creator's Academy, capable of reaching level 32 months ago. Yet he had held back his level for this very competition. He simply could not afford to lose now. His eyes turned white as a glow emanated from them. Shortly after, he suddenly unleashed a burst of powerful holy energy, which collided with the lightning bolt. Seconds later, as the dust settled, Su Sheng was now clad in shimmering golden armor, his veins popping from his forehead. This was his secret skill, the armor of holy light. Rarely seen by others, this skill was legendary for its incredible defensive power, rumored to match the limitless defense of a knight's profession. Some of the audience clearly heard about this, and some of them started to feel pity for Lin, doubting Lin was able to breach such a defense. At this moment, Su Sheng's aura transformed. Seeing this, Lin nodded. This so-called armor of holy light is indeed quite powerful, although no match for his skeletal armor. But end of the day, legendary professions are not something to be looked down upon. Yet, thinking further, Lin raised his hand and summoned a wisp of eerie green flame. However, Su Sheng scoffed, all the while saying currently he was invincible, and that no attack could penetrate his defense. Lin simply smiled, not opting to use his soul flame, but instead becoming deeply interested in just how much can this armor withstand. At the thought of this, he then summoned several skeletal mages, each wielding a different elemental power. The crowd was astounded. It was their first time seeing Lin summon skeletons of 4 distinct elements. Was Lin holding back this entire time? Did he have anything else under his sleeves? Su Sheng was momentarily stunned, not expecting Lin to have such a variety of skeletons at his disposal. Yet even facing 4 elemental mages, he did not believe they posed any threat to him. The 4 skeletal mages took a step forward and simultaneously raised their staves, casting spells at a blinding speed. In an instant, attacks of 4 different elements flew towards Su Sheng. First was wind and fire. Su Sheng felt the terrifying force from the attacks, yet it wasn't enough to breach his defense. Then came ice and lightning, bombarding him relentlessly. But he still appeared very confident, even finding the strength to mock Lin, asking if that was all he got. As soon as the words left his mouth, a cracking sound echoed beside his ears. Su Sheng followed the noise and saw to his horror a crack forming on the shoulder of his armor. The crack swiftly spread, and within moments, his entire shoulder guard was riddled with a web of fissures over 10 centimeters long. Disbelief etched on his face. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could say anything, the crack widened dramatically, and in an instant, the armor of holy light shattered into a million pieces. Without the protection of his armor, a new barrage of attacks rained down from the sky. Su Sheng wanted to say something, but this time he couldn't withstand the onslaught. By the time the audience caught up with the action, he was already outside the arena, utterly eliminated. His eyes were wide open, unable to believe he had been disqualified. Although the arena's protective barriers were designed to prevent fatal injuries, the pain was still real, and Su Sheng was knocked unconscious by the intensity of the pain. The audience fell silent for a few seconds, then erupted into cheers. Lin's skeletons had shattered the armor of holy light, defeating a legendary professional who supposedly countered Lin. People marveled at Lin's formidable power, celebrating his incredible victory. Over at White Divine's small courtyard, White Divine, Meng Anwen, and Old Ning were closely following the competition. White Divine burst into hearty laughter, declaring that Lin was sure to be the champion this time. Meng Anwen nodded in agreement, his eyes drifting towards Mohan, contemplating that the siblings might draw out many hidden forces. When Yi Yi leaped onto the stage to hug Lin, Old Ning blew his beard and stared. cursing at the screen for Lin to keep his distance from Yi Yi. His words, however, couldn't be heard on the stage, and Yi Yi, clinging to Lin's arm, joyfully announced their victory. Old Ning was visibly upset but powerless to intervene. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through as a power professional appeared mid-air, slowly descending onto the stage. Lin quickly shielded Yi Yi, casting a wary glance behind him. The aura emanating from the powerful professional was so powerful that it even became suffocating, the kind only a top-tier professional above level 80 could possess. The competitors took a deep breath, all recognizing the man was a powerful top-tier professional. Yet the man seems to bore no hostility. He looked over everyone, his gaze finally resting on Lin with a smile, praising everyone's performance and saying everyone here has a promising future. He introduced himself as Wei, who was one of the 12 senators of the Empire, and then, with a grand gesture, the 3 sets of championship prizes floated down from the air. He spoke to everyone, but his eyes never left Lin, hinting that should they need assistance in the future, they could seek him out. He was more than happy to offer help. Lin felt something odd about the offer. Was this an attempt to win him over, or was he hinting at something? Yi Yi also sensed something was odd, but neither of them pointed it out right away. Rather, Lin politely thanked the man, who nodded and handed over the championship prize. The moment Lin's fingers touched the prize, he felt something amiss. However, he didn't see a dark energy seeping into his body. Back in White Divine Courtyard, the moment Lin's finger came in contact with the prize, Meng Anwen remarked, "The fish has bitten the hook." Meanwhile, on the stage, Lin took a quick look at the prize before stashing the items into his storage space. However, he kept inspecting his palm, but felt nothing awry. Lin sensed something was amiss, but he couldn't quite figure out what was wrong. Seeing the concern on Lin's face, Yi Yi approached worriedly and asked what was wrong. Lin sighed and shook his head, assuring her that he was fine. Back to White Divine Courtyard. White Divine raised an eyebrow and turned to Meng Anwen, asking who it was. Meng Anwen replied gravely, unable to be completely certain, but suspected it was Wei. Old Ning was surprised and let out a deep sigh, mentioning if it was really Wei, then it would have been troublesome. He then brought up an organization called the Demon Worshipper, suggesting that no one could have anticipated their infiltration to such an extent. If they had penetrated even the high ranks of the Empire, what about other nations? Meng Anwen decided to verify his suspicions one more time and closed his eyes to concentrate. Meanwhile, Lin's team competition had just concluded, and the competition for high-level professionals also concluded, undoubtedly dominated by Mohan's group from the Creators Academy. Their victory was effortless, not just because of Lin's sister, but because each member was extraordinarily strong. Lin, leading his own team to watch, was thrilled to see his sister win in her bracket. Yi Yi, curious, looked toward Mohan, surprised to see that this beautiful woman was truly Lin's sister. As the competition ended, a gust of wind passed, and once again, Senator Wei was presenting the awards. He repeated his familiar opening remarks, telling the winners that they could seek him out if needed in the future. After handing over the prizes, Lin's pupils constricted as that strange sensation returned. He quickly asked Yi Yi to use her skill to examine the pouch that contained the prize money. Without hesitation, Yi Yi activated her skill. Her eyes emitted a golden light as she used the shadow vision. The colorful world around her turned to black and white. Under the shadow vision, Yi Yi immediately noticed something amiss. To her surprise, the pouch was enveloped in a dark aura. Yi Yi furrowed her brows as she scrutinized the pouch, unsure of herself. Yet the black aura seemed to be very similar to that of the abyssal energy. As Mohan came in contact with the pouch, Yi Yi hurriedly warned Lin that the dark aura had already crept up to Mohan's wrist. Yi Yi looked visibly anxious, and she wanted to yell out and tell Mohan, but was stopped by Lin. She was confused, and just as she was about to ask why, she turned around and noticed the very same black aura was also on Lin's wrist. She gasped in surprise. Lin tells her everything is all right, and remains composed, staring at his own wrist. He couldn't see the dark aura himself, but with Yi Yi's confirmation, he had no doubt about its existence. The dark aura spread from the rewards, burrowing into the hands of each member of the team. It seemed his teacher had been right all along. There indeed were rats hidden among them. His teacher had warned him about these individuals, who called themselves the Demon's Worshipper, all followers of the Abyssal Demon, intent on aiding their master's invasion of the human world. Lin's role was to act as bait to expose some of them. Clearly, they had made their move, and with the upcoming solo competition just around the corner, he wondered when these rats exposed themselves. At the same time, Lin was concerned for his sister and the rest of his own team, but at the thought that with his teacher and other divine-level professionals on site, they should be safe, hopefully. The day slowly passed and the sky turned gray. The city was quiet. Most of the professionals were asleep or meditating when suddenly, a fierce wind swept through the city, buildings swaying, the sound of the ocean waves intensifying. Then, the wind picked up, whipping the waves hundreds of meters high, and a massive tsunami was coming their way, nearly submerging the city. The sky thundered, and a portal appeared amidst the storm clouds, with thousands of lightning bolts striking down. However, there was a protective barrier protecting the city. In an instant, the city was enveloped in lightning. These lightning bolts seemed to be controlled, deliberately targeting different parts of the city. As it turned out, they were attacking the magical arrays that controlled the city's barrier. Many professionals emerged, their expressions grave as they watched the unfolding chaos, uncertain of what was happening, but sure it was nothing good. Some noticed a new magical array forming in the sky, possibly the work of a high-level professional. But why would they do this? Lin looked up at the sudden appearance of the magical array. He knew something was odd. It seemed the demon worshippers had finally made their move, with the city hosting a massive gathering of the new generation's powerful professionals, including many prodigies and legendary professionals. Eliminating them before they could grow stronger was the optimal strategy. If successful, it would deal a severe blow to the Empire and the human race. The magical array quickly formed, yet the surrounding storm raged unabated as many buildings collapsed. Many ordinary people who had come to watch the event fled from their hotels in panic, screaming for help on the streets. What was once a quiet night was now filled with cries of despair. Suddenly, a group of figures dressed in black cloaks and wearing masks appeared in the sky, obviously high-level professionals, hovering in the void. Lin looked on with a sinking feeling, realizing that the enemy had dispatched over a dozen top-tier professionals, all above level 70. The distinctive symbols on the cuffs and collars of their cloaks made it clear to everyone. They were members of the demon worshipper. A few more buildings collapsed, and Lin's pupils suddenly constricted. He spotted an individual among the demon worshipper, a top-tier professional over level 80, whose aura was comparable to that of Senator Wei, who had presented the awards to him. Within moments, more armed professionals emerged, many recognizing the people in masks as members of the demon worshippers. Their audacity to strike within the Empire was shocking. Weren't they afraid of White Divine? The leader of the demon worshipper scoffed coldly, looking down at the young professionals below, and commanded, "Kill!" Instantly, about a dozen figures soared towards the ground. They split off in different directions, attacking the strongholds with incredible speed. Just as these attacks began, figures could be seen within the ocean, and countless abyssal creatures surged from the depths. The number was staggering, perhaps over tens of thousands, and while these creatures varied from those typically seen in the Yuan battlegrounds, familiar demons like dog demons and wolf demons were among them. Accompanied by countless other abyssal demons, they roared hungrily, their bloodlust palpable. Alarms blared throughout the city. Every human professional, regardless of past rivalries, sprung into action. Small teams formed as individuals grabbed their weapons, ready for battle. The abyssal creatures that had stormed the shore now rampaged through city, clashing violently with the professionals. At that moment, Lin's wrist began to glow, the dark aura around it sparkling conspicuously. He became a beacon in the crowd, and as if they had found their target, the abyssal demons surged towards him. As the abyssal demons charged towards him, Lin remained calm, almost expecting their arrival. He smiled, having waited for this moment. It wasn't just the abyssal demons that were approaching. Several members of the demon worshippers were also advancing. Looking at how confident Lin seemed, a figure in the sky, no other than the level 80 professional from the demon worshippers with a mocking grin remarked, "Your bravery is commendable but futile. Prodigies like Lin often don't live very long." Suddenly, a voice interrupted, saying he disagreed while saying he was doing quite well himself. The members of the demon worshippers looked up in shock, and glancing back, laid eyes on none other than White Divine. The man chuckled a few times, not particularly surprised to see White Divine, who responded with a laugh of his own, suggesting that perhaps they were expecting to see him, then added coldly, "Right, Senator Wei?" Wei shuddered slightly and let out a sigh as he removed his mask to reveal himself, realizing he was not going to deceive White Divine. However, what seemed odd was that facing White Divine, Senator Wei showed no fear. Perhaps he was well prepared for the encounter. Suddenly, a vortex appeared beside the senator, followed by a playful giggle. A female voice emerged, saying, "Who would dare provoke Lord White Divine without a backup plan?" From the shadows, a figure emerged, a female demon with short hair, 2 long curved horns on her head, and a pair of wings behind her back. She wasn't wearing much and had a lustful figure, and a slender, long tail swayed slowly behind her, adding a playful charm to her appearance. She was one of the Abyssal Lords, Succubus. Upon her appearance, Senator Wei's eyes gleamed with fervor. His breathing became rapid, and his eyes were glued onto her as if already seduced by her. White Divine, however, remained unaffected by her charm, though he became more serious. Seeing the appearance of Succubus, he finally understood why a level 83 top professional would become a minion of demons. Succubus laughed coyly, using her alluring voice to express her regret that she couldn't charm Lord White Divine. White Divine slowly clenched his fist, not planning to let any of them escape. "Since you've come here," he said, "you might as well stay forever." The succubus seemed unconcerned, laughing as she tells White Divine that she had no plan to stay here, and her goal was simply to kill all the human prodigies. Her laughter continued, her body swaying seductively. Suddenly, another vortex appeared beside her, erupting into flames that soared into the sky. A demon lord emerged from the midst of the fire, its body engulfed in flames. The succubus pointed to the fiery figure and mockingly asked White Divine if he still thought he was going to make her stay. With a mighty roar, Old Ning appeared next to White Divine, gritted his teeth, and called out the name of the Inferno Demon Lord. Surprisingly, Succubus didn't look concerned even after seeing Old Ning's arrival. Matter of fact, she thought it was much fairer since now they can have a one-on-one. Not long after, the remaining city's protective barrier was breached, and countless demons surged in. Human professionals stood ready with their weapon drawn. However, suddenly, a burst of radiant holy light swept through the battlefield. Turned out, this light was Su Sheng's skill, which annihilated the abyssal creatures and lower-level demons, covering almost the entire battlefield. Feeling better than ever, Su Sheng regained his confidence. After a day of reflection following his defeat to Lin, he realized losing the match wasn't his fault. Rather, Lin was just monstrously strong, not because he was weak. Although not as powerful as Lin, he's no one to be looked down upon. The surrounding human professionals cheered, however. This scene caught the attention of 2 masked members of the demon worshippers, and in the next moment, they charged towards him. Overseeing the entire city, Succubus laughed, amused by the resistance. However, she found the desperate struggles of humans thrilling. While drawing a heart shape in the air, she became gradually excited. So much so that she extended her tongue and then began licking her lips. She then expressed how she wanted to capture these human prodigies and devour them one by one. White, divine, cold gaze lingered on her, assuring her that her plans would not succeed. Suddenly, the entire city began to shake, and the thunder struck down from the sky as a massive, majestic tower appeared just above the barrier set up by the demon worshippers. With a loud stud, the protected barrier shattered like glass upon impact. The moment Succubus saw the true form of the divine tower, panic set in. Realizing Meng Anwen was also here, she watched in despair as the tower instantly crushed the barrier and grew to an immense size. She soon realized that she was caught in their trap. However, it was too late. The tower then emitted a radiant burst of light, and in the next moment, all of the abyssal creatures and demons were obliterated, vanishing from sight. Lin looked up and knew it was Meng Anwen harnessing the might of the divine tower. Within seconds, no abyssal demons can be seen across the entire city. Looking furious, Succubus glared at White Divine and finally realized that they had been prepared all along. White Divine and Old Ning exchanged a glance and nodded to each other. The next moment, White Divine's hands then glowed with a brilliant white light, revealing his profession for the first time, the Heavenly Fist Overlord. With a fierce punch, as if space itself vibrated, rippling outwards, he unleashed his skill, Heaven-shaking punch, sending a colossal spectral fist hurtling towards Succubus. Simultaneously, Old Ning launched his attack, using the skill, Fire Dragon. Flames surged forward, morphing into a giant dragon that dove toward the Inferno Demon Lord. At the same time, numerous figures appeared on the teleportation platform just below them. Numbering in several dozens on closer look, it was clear that all of them were top-level professionals ranging from level 70 to 80. One can tell just by looking at their overwhelming presence. As soon they appeared, they roared, "Those who invade our empire shall be shown no mercy." Weapons drawn, they charged at the demon worshipper members. Succubus, drenched in cold sweat, realized she messed up big time. She thought she had set up a perfect ambush, yet it was the other way around. The ambush had been perfectly set by humans. From the appearance of 3 divine-level professionals, and the Divine Tower, and later these top-tier professionals, she knew they were doomed, perhaps even destined to die here. In desperation, she rushed towards the Inferno Demon Lord and yelled, "Run!" But just as she spoke, a voice filled the air, declaring,
"None of you will be leaving here alive."
Hearing the voice, Succubus's face contorted in fear. The next moment, a figure appeared in the sky, followed by a massive hand descending upon them. In a panic, Succubus bit her own arm fiercely, drawing blood as she chanted what seemed to be a spell to open a gate to the abyss. She had never expected to see what she referred to as an old bastard join the fray. There's no way she could escape now, and she knew she had to do something or face certain death. This leaves her no choice but to summon the gate to the abyss. Just as the massive hand was about to strike them, a surge of black energy appeared beside them, forming a spinning vortex. From within, a giant spectral fist emerged, slamming towards the golden hand. A voice emanated from the vortex, laughing while saying that they were in a human city and that fighting there could lead to countless human casualties. Upon hearing this voice, White Divine and Old Ning's expressions shifted, becoming more serious. As the scene shifted to the mysterious man, who we know nothing about, finally spoke after a moment of silence. He decided to let them go, however. He coldly addressed the vortex, telling them that next time they will surely die, including the figure behind the vortex, which he referred as Blackfire. Without missing a beat, another gigantic hand then emerged from the vortex, reaching for Succubus and the Inferno Demon Lord, dragging them back into the gate. The vortex slowly faded away, as the gateway to the abyss disappeared shortly after. Lin and the others were unaware of what happened outside, because right after the Divine Tower obliterated every demon outside, they were immediately summoned into the Divine Tower, entering an open field. They all turned out to be participants from the professional competition, and they were sorted into different areas based on their level bracket. Meng Anwen appeared in the sky, his voice echoing throughout the Divine Tower. He first announced the beginning of the solo competition. Lin, among the crowd, was slightly taken aback by Meng Anwen's decision to start the solo competition during the Abyss raid. Meng Anwen then announced that the professionals between levels 20, 29 would face abyssal creatures and abyssal demons ranging from levels 32, 35, totaling about 7,500 of them. Killing an abyssal creature would score 1 point, while an abyssal demon would yield 100 points. The rules were simple: survive until the end, and the highest scorer would be the winner. Suddenly, several thousands of demons and creatures appeared before them. Su Sheng glanced at Lin, wanting to challenge him again. Although he had lost their one-on-one duel, he didn't believe he'd be outmatched in fighting abyssal demons, especially as a holy mage, a natural nemesis of the abyss. Lin just smiled and rubbed his neck, humorously remarking, "Then I hope you managed to snag quite a few before I kill everything." As Meng Anwen's voice rang out once again to signal the start of the solo competition, the invisible wall between them and the abyssal creatures suddenly vanished. Unleashing a horde of abyssal creatures and demons charged furiously towards them. Without missing a beat, Su Sheng activated his skill, Holy Light, sending out a bright curtain of light that quickly expanded. The weaker creatures touched by the Holy Light evaporated instantly, while others were scorched. Panting heavily, it was clear the skill had drained much of his stamina, but at the same time, he estimated that from that one skill, he had wiped out hundreds of abyssal creatures. If he could use the skill a few more times, he was confident the first place would be his. Glancing at Lin, Su Sheng noticed something odd. Lin hadn't summoned any of his skeletons. Instead, Lin raised one of his hands as if waiting for something. Su Sheng was confused, wondering if Lin had seen his holy light and decided to give up. But the next moment, A flash of red light emanated in Lin's hand, and Su Sheng heard him say something along the line of, "Thanks for the corpses," before he had the chance to ask Lin what he said. Suddenly, a massive explosion erupted, causing the ground to shake violently. Su Sheng turned quickly towards the sound, and was stunned by what he saw next. Whether that's abyssal creatures or demons, everything fell in the wake of the explosion, drenched in cold sweat, as he quickly realized just how powerful this skill was, much stronger than his holy light. But who could have orchestrated such an attack? Then it dawned on him. He turned around and thought, could it be? Lin maintained his pose, his hand continuously emitting red light. Su Sheng was right. It was indeed Lin. In an instant, all the human professionals stopped what they were doing and turned their attention toward him. Incredulously, they soon realized that Lin was not just a summoner, but perhaps a mage with powerful AoE skills as well. They start to wonder, why had Lin never used such a powerful skill before? As each deafening explosion erupted, every explosion obliterated hundreds of abyssal creatures. In mere moments, the entire battlefield was cleared of any living abyssal creatures, leaving only charred corpses scattered across the terrain. However, some demons, quicker and luckier, had managed to evade the blast by flying as high as they could. Lin surveyed the field, contemplating that most of the abyssal creatures had been dealt with, and what remained were the lower-level demons. Other human professionals also recognized this shift. Though the abyssal creatures were gone, killing demons scored 100 points compared to just 1 point for the abyssal creature. At the thought of this, perhaps they still had the chance to win. Driven by this realization, everyone surged forward, chasing after the demons. Su Sheng, shaken briefly by Lin's prowess, also realized that he needed to grab onto the opportunity to potentially surpass Lin if he also focused on going after the demons. Once again, regaining his confidence, he once again activated his armor of holy light and clutched his golden staff. However, just as he was about to take a step forward, a chill ran down his spine, as if something extremely powerful had materialized behind him. Hair standing on end, he slowly turned to look back. The first thing he saw was a pair of wings, spanning several meters. Then, the full visage of a monstrous creature came into view. None other than a Hell Outpost guardian who wielded a massive cleaver. When he turned back towards Lin, he noticed that Lin was now clutching onto a black scythe. Before he could react, the guardian charged forward. At the same time, countless shackles flew towards the fleeing lower-level demons. In an instant, the demons' movement slowed to a crawl, almost as if frozen in place, and the next moment, the guardian materialized in front of them. With its massive cleaver raised, it mercilessly slashed through the demons, felling them like weed. The other professionals momentarily halted, stunned by the sudden appearance of the guardian. The moment they saw him slaughtering the demons, they couldn't help but suspect this was another of Lin's skills. Everyone gazed at Lin, baffled. Whether it was the earlier explosions or this guardian, they had one question on their mind, which was just how many more tricks did Lin have up his sleeve? Was this really just a solo competition, or was it a one-man show starring Lin? This thought was exactly what was going through Su Sheng's mind as he stared at Lin, pondering the hell is going on with this necromancer profession. Meanwhile, Tang, who had earlier conceded to Lin knowing he couldn't match up, had become a fanboy of Lin after witnessing just how powerful he was. He laughed heartily, teasing Su Sheng, only now realizing Lin is the real boss, huh? The Guardian relentlessly reaped the lives of each demon, and streams of golden light flew toward Lin. Not long after, a new star appeared on his military badge, marking his promotion to a 3-star lieutenant. As the dust settled and the battlefield grew quiet, the surrounding professionals still hadn't gotten out of their daze, and everyone's eyes were glued to Lin. Not only was he immensely powerful, but he also held the rank of a 3-star lieutenant. Given his young age and the same level as most of them, it was hard to imagine just how many demons Lin had defeated to earn such a high military rank. Su Sheng glanced between Lin and his own badge, feeling embarrassed and shattered the confidence he had painstakingly built up after his previous defeat. Tang, cheekily looking at Su Sheng's badge, noticed that Su Sheng was merely a 1-star private. He couldn't resist teasing while saying he had thought Su Sheng was a big deal, but it turns out he's just a 1-star private. Embarrassed and then angered by Tang's comments, Su Sheng retorted that he had been focusing on his training and hadn't yet really entered the Yuan battlefield, asserting that once he did, he would surpass Tang within mere days. Tang, not bothered by the comeback, simply pointed at Lin and quipped that catching up to Lin was the real achievement. He then shrugged and sighed, laughing as he added, Su Shen can only dream of catching up to Lin in this lifetime. Tang continued to use Lin as a benchmark to taunt Su Shen, and there was nothing Su Shen could do. We switch back to the scene of the battlefield, where the corpses of the demons had piled up on a small mountain, nearly all of them slain by Lin alone. The professionals standing beside him didn't really know what to say. Perhaps that this solo competition had truly been a solo show by Lin. With a calm gesture, Lin then raised his scythe and summoned the Guardian back into his scythe. Shortly after their harrowing ordeal, everyone was teleported out by the Divine Tower and found themselves back in the center of Nantong City. The city was brightly lit and looked peaceful as if the demon invasion had never happened. Suddenly, someone noticed a body ahead. It was a member of the demon worshippers, clad in a black robe and mask, lying dead. Above them, there were many human professional powerhouses, as well as many other members of the demon worshippers who were now being detained. White Divine's voice then resonated through the city. He introduced himself, and as his voice carried across the crowd, everyone looked towards him with respect, while cheering loudly. With White Divine here, no one could stir trouble. He explained that the attack by the demon worshippers had been anticipated and prepared for. He then expressed his satisfaction at seeing the young professionals not backing down from the fight. Clenching his fist, he announced that they had successfully subdued the attackers and ingeniously turned the ordeal into a practical part of the solo competition. White Divine then proceeded to announce the champions of the solo competition for different level brackets. Lin, no doubt, was declared the champion for the 20 to 29 level bracket. Soon after, prizes materialized before each champion. Continuing, White Divine revealed that the next day would feature a challenging event open to anyone confident in their abilities. He then added that the rewards for this challenge will be exceptionally generous. Well, looks like things just got a bit more interesting, and more loot for our boy Lin. After White Divine finished announcing everything, people went on with their night, much relieved that what happened earlier was finally settled. In the crowd, Mohan spotted Lin. She checked him all around then and asked if he was all right. Lin said he was fine when he then inquired about his sister's well-being. Both knew each other were safe. His sister got to the point. Turned out, she was leaving soon and wanted to say goodbye. Lin was a bit surprised, especially with the challenge match coming up tomorrow. He wondered if his sister still participating. Mohan chuckled and playfully remarked that she is nearly level 45, and she has no plan to attend and wants to leave the spotlight to Lin. Then she waved goodbye and slowly walked away. Seconds after, Yi Yi tiptoed up behind Lin, shyly clutching his arm and watching her sister's departing figure. Curious, Lin asked why she hadn't come over earlier. He would have had the chance to introduce her to his sister. While blushing, Yi Yi confessed she wasn't mentally prepared yet. Lin, ever the dense guy, wondered why meeting his sister required any preparation. Either way, he didn't dwell on it, turned around, and asked Yi Yi what had happened outside while he was teleported to the Divine Tower. Only then did Lin learn that the Abyss had sent out both Succubus and a Flame Demon Lord, but they were intercepted by White Divine and Yi Yi's grandfather, Old Ning. At the same time, the top-level professionals from Xiajing Academy had also teleported to the city, and soon joined the fight. They managed to either slain or capture members of the demon worshippers. Yi Yi then recalled that another much more powerful person had appeared, seemingly even more powerful than White Divine. The moment the person appeared, the two demon lords quickly fled as if facing something terrifying. Just as they were about to be killed, Succubus even used her own blood to summon a portal connected to the Abyss, and within, a powerful demon blocked the mysterious person's attack. Things got a bit complicated, and they wanted to avoid a battle over the city that could endanger innocents. Because of this, the two demon lords got away, and even the senator was dragged away with them. Lin was surprised to hear about the Flame Demon Lord. He wondered if it was the same one they had encountered before, which Yi Yi confirmed. Lin was slightly taken aback, not expecting that neither White Divine nor Old Ning could subdue the demon lords quickly. It seemed the demon lords were much more powerful than he had once thought, but Lin wasn't necessarily worried. He still had the teleportation stone and was confident that he would someday finish them himself. Later in the night, we returned to White Divine's small courtyard. Meng Anwen sat on a stone bench, leisurely sipping his freshly brewed tea. Just as he took his first sip, footsteps sounded not far from him. White Divine and Old Ning strode in, both appearing to be in a not very good mood. Meng Anwen asked if they handled everything. White Divine, somewhat resentfully, gulped down a cup of tea and revealed that Blackfire had intervened, rescuing the two demon lords. Old Ning was even more upset, loudly cursing that had it not been for Blackfire, he would have surely killed the Flame Demon Lord. It was clear that the two of them had some really strong beef. Meng Anwen looked a bit surprised, since he knew the old man was there too. So what happened? White Divine let out a sigh, and explained that Succubus had used her blood to open a portal to the abyss. If it weren't for their hesitation to cause collateral damage above the city, they could have captured the two demon lords, and it didn't matter if Blackfire intervened or not. Things didn't go as planned, but at least they racked out many rats, and even exposed the senator. However, this isn't all good news, and Old Ning's brow further. The fact that a senator, one of the top council members, and highest echelons of human society, had turned against them was deeply concerning. It raised the alarm that there might be other spies and traitors within their ranks. Meng Anwen's expression grew more serious. He stroked his beard and told them that he would thoroughly investigate this matter, and it was time for a purge within the empire. The next day arrived quickly, and Nanhong City returned to its usual state as if the events of the previous day had never happened. The arena was packed as usual, but the buzz among the crowd was all about the surprise attack by the demon worshippers during the night. Due to this, the format of the solo competitions had changed. Other than the result, no one had the chance to see the competition. Thus, the anticipation for today's challenge matches was higher than usual. This challenge match was also the final event in the professional competition series. The rules of the challenge match were simple. Anyone could participate, and if a contestant succeeded in 5 rounds, they would receive substantial rewards. However, the challenge matches were easier said than done. Here's the key. As it turned out, participants had to challenge opponents 5 levels higher than themselves, and the level differences increased as the round progressed. In the second round, the gap would increase to 10 levels, and in the third round to 15 levels, and so on. So most lower-level professionals might end up going up against high-level professionals who have gone through their second-class transfer. So for someone like Lin, who's level 27 right now, if he successfully passed the 4th round, he would encounter a level 52 professional in the 5th round. Over the centuries, only a handful of prodigies had completed the 2nd round, and only a handful had ever succeeded in the 3rd round. The crazy thing is, no one had ever completed the 4th round. Therefore, the rewards were also very generous. Passing the 1st round grants a brilliant basic skill scroll, and for the 2nd round it will be a brilliant intermediate skill scroll, a lucky magical potion after that. 2 brilliant intermediate skill scrolls for the 4th round. As for the 5th round, no one knew what the reward was, as no one had ever reached it. I know I've been talking too much, and you all know what's about to happen next. So let's skip ahead to the action. The 1st round, I'm sorry to say, was not Lin's match, but featured a male challenger, a 34-level sword and shield knight. His opponent was also a sword and shield knight, but 5 levels higher at level 39. The opponent wore silver armor and a black robe, holding a silver shield. His face bore several scars, and his equipment showed signs of damage. Clearly, he's been in some tough fights. Lin could tell this guy was from the military, as his demeanor showed that he'd been through numerous life and death battles on the Yuan battlefield. Lin was absolutely right. Cao Cao explained that the challenge matches were notoriously difficult, not only due to the level disparity, but also because the defenders were handpicked from the Empire's military from the hosting nation. As the match started, the challenge